Aaliyah's small hands gripped the wheels of her chair as she rolled down the cracked sidewalk, the late afternoon sun warming her skin. She had just bought a few snacks from the corner store, the crinkling plastic bag resting on her lap. The world felt peaceful for once. She hummed softly, her favorite song playing in her head, but the sharp blare of a police siren shattered the moment. She flinched, her heart pounding as the car skidded to a stop beside her. The door slammed open, and a tall, broad-shouldered officer stepped out, his uniform crisp, his presence suffocating. Officer Bradley's cold blue eyes locked onto her, his hand hovering near his holster. "You match the description of a suspect," he barked, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Hands where I can see them." Confusion flashed across Aaliyah's face. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the wheels. "What? I didn't do anything." Her voice wavered, but she kept her gaze steady. Bradley took a step closer, his boots scraping against the pavement. "Don't play dumb, girl. You were seen stealing from the store." Aaliyah's breath hitched. "No, I wasn't. I just bought some chips and juice." She lifted the bag slightly, the store's receipt visible through the plastic. "Look, I paid for everything." Bradley barely glanced at it. Instead, he pulled out his radio, muttering something Aaliyah couldn't make out. A sickening realization hit her. He didn't care about the truth. He had already made up his mind. Aaliyah's hands trembled as she held up the receipt, her voice cracking with frustration. "Please, just look. I have proof." But Bradley's expression remained cold, unreadable. His fingers hovered near his belt, the tension in his stance making her stomach twist with fear. She had seen videos like this before, stories of people who looked like her being accused, being hurt, being silenced. A few passers-by had started gathering, their curious gazes turning into concerned stares. A middle-aged woman in a red coat stepped forward. "Officer, I was in the store. She didn't steal anything. She paid like everyone else." Bradley's jaw tightened. "Stay out of this, ma'am." His voice was sharp, his authority absolute. Aaliyah felt the heat rising in her chest, a mixture of fear and helplessness. "I swear, I didn't do anything wrong," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper now. Bradley ignored her, lifting his radio to his mouth. "Suspect is non-compliant, requesting backup." Non-compliant, the word sent a jolt of panic through her. "No, I'm not." The growing crowd murmured, phones appearing in hands, lenses capturing every moment. A young man in a hoodie recorded from a few feet away. "This ain't right," he muttered. "She's just a kid." Another woman shouted, "Let her go. She's in a wheelchair, for God's sake." Bradley's face darkened. "I said step back." His voice thundered through the street as he took another step toward Aaliyah, towering over her small frame. She gripped the arms of her chair, heart racing. "Please, I just want to go home." Bradley exhaled, shaking his head like he had heard enough. His fingers moved toward his handcuffs, and Aaliyah's stomach dropped. This was really happening. Aaliyah's breath came in short, panicked gasps as she watched Bradley's fingers tighten around the cuffs. Her whole body tensed, a deep sense of dread washing over her. "Please," she begged, gripping the arms of her wheelchair. "You don't have to do this." Bradley didn't hesitate. With one rough motion, he grabbed the handles of her wheelchair and yanked it backward. The sudden force sent her body jerking, her bag of snacks tumbling onto the pavement. The receipt she had tried so desperately to show fluttered to the ground, ignored. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Hey, you're hurting her." Aaliyah winced, her arms flailing slightly as she struggled to regain control of her chair. But before she could say another word, Bradley reached down, grabbing her by the wrist. His grip was like iron, his fingers digging into her skin as he yanked her forward. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice cracking in fear. "You're hurting me!" Tears burned in her eyes as she fought to keep her balance. Her wheelchair tilted dangerously, the wheels scraping against the pavement. Bradley twisted her arms behind her back, locking the cold steel cuffs around her small wrists. The crowd erupted in anger. "This is too much," one man yelled. Another woman had tears in her eyes. "She's just a girl. She can't even run." Bradley ignored them all. His face remained stone cold as he yanked Aaliyah out of her wheelchair. She gasped as she hit the hard surface of the police car, her body weak from the shock. "Stay still," he ordered, pressing her against the vehicle as he reached for the door. Aaliyah choked back a sob, her mind racing. How had this happened? How had a simple trip to the store turned into this nightmare? She turned her head slightly, catching sight of the phones still recording, the faces twisted in outrage. Someone shouted, "We got this all on camera!" But Bradley didn't seem to care. He opened the door, ready to throw her inside. Just as Bradley grabbed Aaliyah's arms to shove her into the back seat, the wail of another siren cut through the tension. A second police car screeched to a stop, and out stepped Detective Johnson, a tall black woman with sharp eyes that immediately locked onto the chaotic scene. She took one look at Aaliyah, her tear-streaked face pressed against the police car, her wheelchair abandoned on the ground, and then at the furious crowd, their phones held high, recording everything. Her expression darkened. "What the hell is going on here?" Johnson's voice was firm, commanding. Bradley barely spared her a glance. "Got a suspect resisting arrest," he muttered, tightening his grip on Aaliyah's arm. Johnson's eyes flicked to the girl's trembling form, the handcuffs digging into her small wrists. She stepped closer, her voice calm but laced with authority. "This girl, in a wheelchair," Bradley scoffed. "She matches the description of a shoplifter." A bystander, an elderly man, stepped forward. "That's a damn lie. She didn't steal anything. We all saw her pay." Another woman held up her phone. "I got everything on video. You're gonna be all over the news." Johnson clenched her jaw. "Uncuff her." Bradley hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "She was non-compliant." Johnson's eyes flashed. "She's a disabled child, Bradley. You dragged her out of her chair, and the whole damn street saw it. Uncuff her, now." The air grew thick with tension. The crowd was silent, waiting. Aaliyah sniffled, her breath shaky. Bradley's fingers twitched as he reluctantly pulled out his keys. The cuffs clicked open, and Aaliyah rubbed her sore wrists. Johnson knelt in front of her, lowering her voice. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Aaliyah nodded weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to go home." Johnson's lips pressed into a thin line as she turned back to Bradley. "Give me your badge." Bradley's head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me." Johnson folded her arms. "You used excessive force on a disabled minor based on nothing. You're done." The crowd cheered, some clapping, others shouting in agreement. Bradley's face burned red, but he knew he had no choice. Slowly, he removed his badge and handed it over. Aaliyah let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. Johnson helped her back into her wheelchair and turned to the crowd. "This young lady is free to go, and if anyone wants to file a report on what they saw, I'll be right here." The people erupted in applause. As Aaliyah was wheeled away by a kind stranger, she looked back at Bradley, who stood there frozen, his career shattered. For the first time that day, she felt safe.